God gave him a dream that would give him an opportunity to realize your kingdom is really awesome. It's gold, but it's not going to last forever. The kingdom may not last forever, but if you give me your heart, you might have an opportunity at eternal life. Nebuchadnezzar, what would you like? Your kingdom or eternal life? Which I have glorified. May it last forever. Let me ask you, we're sitting here today in the great controversy, and we're sitting here, and this is why we should never take glory unto ourselves. Jesus was willing to wash his disciples' feet, while Satan said, I need to be in the counsels of God. Satan wanted to be above God because he wants the glory that goes with it. That's why in Matthew chapter 4, Jesus is tempted. The last temptation is he asked Jesus, he gave him a temptation, fall down and worship me, and I will give you all of these things. Do you know, I'm going to share something with you. The audacity for Satan to say that. You know what that's like? That's like someone stealing your car and saying, you know what, bow down to me and I might give you this car when it's your car. The audacity. But remember, as Daniel was talking with King Nebuchadnezzar, he also said a couple other things. Daniel 2:39, he said, after thee shall arise another, what? Kingdom inferior to thee. Now this is very interesting, because history shows what took place here, and it's exactly as God had written down hundreds of years later. Another kingdom did arise. So let's set the context. King Cyrus from the Medes and the Persians, it was a coalition of two empires, gathered together and said, we want to conquer Babylon. They went to Babylon. As they came to Babylon, and the people of Babylon stood upon the great walls, and they said, we're going to conquer you. The people laughed at them and threw food at them, mocking them. Cyrus, one not to give up, took his army down the Euphrates, I should say up the Euphrates, to plan. Sent two spies into Babylon. These spies came back, and as they came back, they began to share with Cyrus that there's going to be, guess what? New Year's is coming. Now I'm speaking metaphorically. New Year's is coming, and they got this big ball in the middle of Babylon, and Dick Clark is going to be hosting this great party, and this ball's going to drop. Everyone's going to be partying and dancing, and you know what? We can get them that night, because then we could come unexpectedly. Unexpectedly. The guys went in and they found the story that this was going to transpire and take place. Lo and behold, the party takes place on the appointed night. Party and revelry, darkness and wickedness taking place, and to the point where they said, why don't you bring out the cups from the Jewish sanctuary? Let's get bombed by using Yahweh's cups. Let's have a toast to Jehovah and how good he is. Unknown to the people there at that time in Babylon, Cyrus was upriver and had a plan that his people were digging ditches and canals like the California Delta all over the place, because the plan came in, let's dig ditches and canals, because the only way we could get into Babylon is through the Euphrates, but the Euphrates is filled with water. But if we build ditches and canals and we can divert the water, we could go into Babylon, because God promised that the gates would be open, and all we had to do is get in the city. Let's get under the walls. At that time, Daniel 5 speaks of this, and this is what it says. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite to the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. I want you to think about that. You're at some party. Don't go to parties, but just bear with me. Go to clean parties. And some hand, because the wickedness of the party gets out of hand, comes in and sets judgment. In Daniel 5, we're told that no one knew really what to do. But they said, call Daniel, the king's wife. Daniel comes and he interprets what this hand wrote on the wall. Meaning, God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And lo and behold, as judgment was falling upon Babylon, the Medes and the Persians were marching up the muddy bottom of the Euphrates River to take over the kingdom of Babylon. In fact, the miracle here, Cyrus, who was the leader, as I shared with you, his name specifically, most of you know this, in Isaiah chapter 45, his name was given in there 100 years before his birth. He came in October 13th, 539, and conquered Babylon. And this is what it says in Isaiah 45. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden to subdue the nations before him. What was the nation before Cyrus? Babylon. And I will loose the loins of the kings and open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. And notice we have in this dream, in this image, we have the transition from the head of gold to the arms of silver. Babylon went from 605 BC to 539 BC, and ushered in was exactly as God predicted and foretold, the Medo-Persian Empire. Nowhere near as incredible as Babylon, but bigger. Notice the dark purple there in the middle represents Babylon, and this represents the Medo-Persian Empire. And in fact, you're going to notice in the same way that the metals, one metal is valued more than the other, and also their strength. Different metals, different strengths. Here the Persian Empire gains ground and locale, begins to expand. Verse 239, and another kingdom of brass which shall rule over the whole earth. So notice, head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, feet partly of iron, partly of clay. And this started at 605 BC. And now it's rolling through history. History shows us, if you go and just open up the books, this is not Pastor Mike's interpretation. This is literally, directly, the Bible bears this out. History, all history does is confirm it. The Medo-Persian Empire went from 539 to 331. And lo and behold, my dad would be happy about this. There was a young 25-year-old individual who wanted to rule the earth. Alexander the Great. He came on the scene and he wanted to rule the whole earth. And lo and behold, history reveals that Alexander the Great, at the age of 25, conquered Darius at the plains of Arbela in 331. So notice the transition, head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass. And now the kingdoms are rolling through history. In fact, we're told that Alexander the Great made one of his capitals there, Babylon itself. History says this. One historian said this, I am persuaded that there was no nation, city, nor people, being whether his name did not reach. There seems to me to have been some divine hand presiding over his birth and his actions. And that's exactly what takes place, because God sets up kings and he sets down kings. God allows certain things to take place that you and I sometimes cannot fathom and understand. But notice, we're going from the head of gold, the chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass. Now we're getting down to the legs. Greece went from 331 to 168 BC. Notice in verse 40 of Daniel 2 what it says. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron break into pieces and subdue all things. Okay, my bad on that slide. Smile. Real church for real people. Your pastor makes mistakes. That helps me with my pride. It's a God thing. Iron is to come in, and as the iron legs are to come in, the kingdom of Rome would conquer the Greeks. And they were more vicious than the Greeks prior. The one thing with Alexander the Great is he would like to incorporate some of his soldiers to intermarry with the people of that next country, so politically it could be a smooth transition. Rome came in and did things her way. And if you remember, Jesus was born at the height of Rome. If you also remember, Joseph and Mary left Egypt because of a decree from Herod the Great, right? And then Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, put Jesus to death. And in fact, Jesus, when he was on the cross, we know that the words we were told in the Gospels was written in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. From the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, the book, this is what the author says. The images of gold, silver, and brass that might serve to represent the nations and their kings were successfully broken by the iron monarchy of what? Of Rome. So this is real important. I'm going to share with you why. Let's say we did not know Babylon was that kingdom and Medo-Persia was that kingdom. All you really had to do is go back and say, okay, who did Rome conquer? Rome conquered who? The Greeks. And you can back trace history. The Bible reveals it, history confirms it. As Rome hit the height, the apex of her glory, her sin was unmatched. They crumbled from the inside out. From appetite to orgies, to political intolerance, represents the legs of Rome. But notice what the Bible, history records, 168 BC to 476 AD, Rome ruled. And notice in verse 41 and 42 it says, whereas you saw the feet and the toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be what? So notice this is something different. Every other kingdom is transitioning from one kingdom to the next. Babylon to Medo-Persia, Medo-Persia to Greece, Greece to Rome, but the next one is what? Divided. Partly of iron, partly of clay. Partly strong. Notice. And here you had the barbaric tribes. We're very much in the dark about this in history because people don't want you to read your history books. Revisioning history happens all the time. But if you go and do your homework, you will see that these groups of people, the Suevi, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Alemanni, all over Europe, these barbarian tribes would soon make up Western Europe. The Germanic tribes is the Alemanni. If anyone here that's Spanish, tell me how you say German in Spanish? Alemán. That's coincidence, right? Anglo-Saxons became the English. The Burgundians became the Swiss. The Franks became the French. The Heruli were destroyed. We'll talk about that. It's very interesting. That's a prophecy also. The Lombards became the Italians. The Ostrogoths were also destroyed. The Suevi became the Portuguese. And the Vandals were also destroyed. That's a prophecy that the Bible even talks about that makes it true. Validates everything that the Bible says. And the Visigoths, who were the Spanish. Everything that the Bible says is true, friends. And I know people, they're going to try to cast doubt, but if you truly with an open heart study your Bible and you go back and you look at history, you will see that there's only been one book that's ever been written that is so divine, that outlines the events of history in such a way that God is giving you and I an opportunity to be prepared for eternity if we spend time to understand this book, because there's no way you could spend time in the book without not being transformed and changed and understanding God Himself. Verse 43, it goes on and it says, speaking of the toes, they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron does not mix with clay. In the year 800, you see that he died in 814. But the year 800, Pope Leo crowned Charlemagne Emperor of Rome on Christmas Day, hoping that Charlemagne would reunite the Roman Empire. Now, Daniel says they shall not cleave, meaning they're not going to be together. And through history, we've had tons of people come through trying to reunite Europe to make it one. Charles V came on board and he fought against Protestantism. Louis XIV, with his cute high heels, came on the scene, setting a new fashion trend. Notice one historian says Louis XIV inherited a kingdom that was eternally divided, militarily exhausted, and nearly bankrupt. He left to his heirs the greatest power in the Western world. Napoleon Bonaparte comes on the scene. Now look, we're going from 605 BC, Babylon, where the head of gold starts, into the toes. Into the toes. And now we're rolling in the 17 and 1800s. Napoleon Bonaparte, the small big man, comes on the scene and he wants to rule. One of the most greatest famous conquerors that history ever had. He wants to rule. And if it wasn't by the hand of God, when he went into Russia and lost 1/3 of his army, I believe by God allowing that to take place, his desire, Napoleon's desire, was to also rule. And then over in Denmark, you have the Frederiksborg Castle, which shows a history that at one time in Europe, the king and the queen and all of the people there in Europe intermarried to try to weld Europe together. This is history. But notice what it says in Daniel 42:43. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men. They tried to intermarry and reunite Europe. But they will not cleave one to another, as iron does not mix with clay. Next on the scene comes Kaiser Wilhelm. At the end of the 1800s and the early 1900s, and it's because of his policies that World War I comes into existence. Next, another individual who believes in a 1,000-year Reich, believes in a perfect race of people in his mind, wants to rule the world. He comes on the scene. I'm going to share with you, all these people really needed to do, friends, is read their Bibles and submit. A lot of bloodshed could have been avoided. A lot of bloodshed could have been avoided. We're told that in history that Cyrus the Great was told of what God had spoken of him, and he was one of the reasons why Israel was allowed to go back and to begin to restore Jerusalem, humbled his heart. So not all rulers are bad people. Some can submit to an authority, but the ones that use the attributes of Satan will never submit to that kind of authority. It's impossible. Impossible. All of these rulers trying to unite, trying to become the leaders of the world, trying to be number one. So notice those toes. You heard other people, other pastors say, we're not living in the toes, we're living in the toenails. However you want to say it. History bears out that those toes have been existent since 476 AD, and they're still rolling to today, 2020. So one of the things that's very important for you and I to understand is that when Daniel told King Nebuchadnezzar what's going to happen in the latter days, you and I are living in the latter days. You guys are living in the time before Jesus comes. And it's an exciting time to be living in. For the God of heaven wants to live in you as he lived in Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. For those of you ladies, I'm sorry there's not a lady there. God wants to live in you like Queen Esther. Wants you to be able to make a difference in this world, to be able to intercede for his people, even when the government says no. Verses 44 and 45. And in those days, these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all of these kingdoms, and it shall stand what? Forever. I'm going to share something with you, friends. I'm very blessed. You hear me when we have, when the 4th of July comes around, I tell you I'm American born. My mom was pregnant 6 months with me when she came to America. My lineage, I'm very thankful that God, I was born in America and I come from Greek descent. That means a lot to my parents, especially the Greek part. But I'm going to share with you, the greater part is not that I'm American or that I'm raised from Greek descent. The greater part is, am I a son of God? Am I in that family? Because soon and very soon, that stone, which the Bible talks about, which Paul talks about, and even the Gospels say in Luke, the stone that the builders rejected became the chief cornerstone. That rock representing Christ is going to come out of heaven and it's going to smash all of these earthly kingdoms that have ever existed, and it's going to smash it, and God's kingdom will reign forever. Here's the point. God's kingdom must reign in your heart and my heart today. We must be citizens of his kingdom. He's coming back, that stone, as we've been talking about, and he's coming back for his people. People who were tired of lying and stealing and murder and ugliness. People who get excited and joyful for righteous things. Things of the light, not things of the dark. And notice in verse 47, King Nebuchadnezzar now decides to speak. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of what? God of gods. But notice, Nebuchadnezzar was soon going to learn that there's no other gods. It's only Daniel's God. He's going to learn it. It's going to take some very interesting circumstances and 7 years out in the sticks eating grass to get to that place. But he's taken the first initial step now to realize that Daniel's God is a God of gods. And a Lord of lords, and a revealer of what? Since you were able to reveal this secret. The enchanters, the soothsayers, the Chaldeans proclaimed, no one can do this. God does not live with people. And now the king of those soothsayers ends up saying, Daniel, your God is different than all other gods. I can already see it. You have this weird diet that I'm not sure of right now, that I'm probably going to want to learn. And you have these really weird prayer rituals that I really don't understand. But I can tell your God is above all. Your God is above all. I believe that we're living at the end of time. I know many of you have heard that. I know many of you have spoken that. I do not know what that means. You are asking the wrong person. Pastor Mike, what does that mean? The day or the hour, I do not know. But what I do know is this world is pregnant, and I feel her travail now. I feel her pains. And soon and very soon, Christ is going to come. Here's my question to all of you. Are you ready? Are you ready to meet Jesus in the clouds of glory? I don't know about you, but I can share with me, I'm tired of seeing all the ugliness take place that's taking place. I'm tired of seeing people always fight with one another. I'm tired of seeing this side and that side. I'm tired of seeing wickedness seem to be successful and winning. I'm tired of seeing the church, not this church, we're talking the Christian church. I am tired of seeing the church whittle down its message so that we think that because people get baptized and our numbers might grow and look good, deep down inside, we're a coffin putting people in sepulchers. God will hold those people accountable. But as for me and my household, we want to serve God. His way. His way. Full heart, purpose to do His will, purpose to reveal Him to our spouses. Husbands, reveal Christ to your spouse, to your wife. I have never seen a wife be bitter and angry at her husband who her husband watered. If he doesn't water her, she will dry up and she will wither. Water your wives. Wives, honor your husbands. If he tells you things that aren't right and he demands, God before your husband. Amen? That's what Reagan did to me, and it helped me. We are to be training a generation of children to be able to stand for God as Daniel and his captive buddies were able to do. And I can share with you, I believe that we are failing at large. If there's anyone who should be doing it, we should be the first and foremost the ones to be doing this. Let us stand and let us sing our closing hymn. I believe it's hymn number 428. And I want to make an appeal. Maybe this is your first time here, or maybe things have led you to come here back a second time or a third time that you've been here. But if the Spirit of God has spoken to you today, and maybe you need to set things in order within your house, within maybe yourself first, within your family, and God is calling for you to really take the matters seriously, to know that you are living in the latter days, to be prepared to see Him and prepare your family, and God has spoken to you.